What does love mean within the context of Warhammer 40,000? More than you might think, and I do not mean romantic love, although apparently there are in-universe romance novels, but that's not what I'm talking about. I am talking about a more platonic brotherly love, a trust and desire to respect and be there for each other that we often see in many of the more honor-driven orders within the various factions. Hell, even the orcs can sometimes display that in the case of 𝐀𝐦𝐻𝐭. But today I want to talk about an individual that more than anything else wanted that sort of love and respect, but had to give himself away in search of it, and as a result, never got the thing he desperately wanted. That man is Kharn the Betrayer. Kharn is an interesting character because in many ways, he is one of the most famous villains in the entire franchise. Even before he was a real character, he was incredibly well known, and as far back as 2nd edition, his silhouette of him holding up his chain axe Gorechild shouting into the air is something we still identify as a core part of the character. But after a while, he began to be expanded upon and humanized in a way I believe no one really expected. Kharn was born on Terra, something that immediately is quite interesting. Most of the highly influential first captains or equerries of the Primarchs within the Traitor Legions were often born on the same world as their Primarch. This immediate differentiation between Kharn and his Primarch further adds to my idea that the World Eaters were bonded together more by creed and goal than planetary or cultural identity. Similar to how Khorne does not care for how the blood flows, if you have the same zeal and ferocity to earn your place in the fighting pits of the Legion, you belong within the World Eaters, and Kharn certainly did. He was a master of his craft, a brilliant tactician, a master duelist, and one of the most foremost captains within the Warhounds and later World Eaters Legion. While he may not have been the Legion Master, he certainly could have been. And to the outside public, Kharn was the face of the Warhounds, and when you look at the bonds he had with, say, Sigismund of the Imperial Fists, Garviel Loken of the Luna Wolves, Argel Tal of the Wordbearers, and even the Flesh Terror himself, Nasir Amit, Kharn certainly made a wide and strong impression, much like the Legion he belonged to. However, despite that impression and glory that he had, that did not change the fact that he was without a father he craved and yearned for. So after fighting tooth and nail all over the galaxy for over 100 years, when he was finally reunited with the man that could truly understand the skill and temperament he had been refining, what he found was rejection, a slap in the face from the father that was supposed to care and love for his sons, and that love continued to be squandered, as over the next week after Angron was found, he would kill every son of his that approached the altar of his supposed grace. The only man to truly best Angron, not with blades but with words, was Kharn, and what he faced was something that truly took him aback. Angron was indulging in his own pain, loudly, violently. The outbursts that he had were not contempt for his sons, at least not immediately, but of loss. Angron lost his family, the people that he loved, cared for, fought, and bled with, and now the only thing he had left to bleed was those he was supposed to consider sons. On some intrinsic and instinctual level, Kharn understood this. So when Kharn was met with the wrath and the rage of his Primarch, instead of fighting back, he met that rage with compassion, with love. He would not lay a hand on his Genefather, as to him it was the ultimate defiance of the honor code he upheld, and a betrayal of the ideas of the Legion that he stood for. Kharn would not betray his father, no matter what. And whether or not Kharn realized it at the time, this patience and understanding in the face of what many would consider a traumatic outburst gained a sort of trust from Angron that Angron could never admit to anyone. So as a result, Kharn would become the equerry of Angron, and would be the only person who was actually able to reach Angron, not with violence but with words, in the times when he needed it most. And in a lot of ways, Kharn was almost a mirror of Angron, and just as often as he would encourage Angron's good behaviors, he would often make excuses for actions that down the line would go on to damn the Legion that he adored serving. Angron and his Legion would set upon the galaxy, bringing many worlds into compliance through many bloody and apocalyptic battles. Where Angron would lead from the front, Kharn would be right behind him, picking off the stragglers Angron would leave behind. Despite Angron's contempt for much of the Legion, its Psykers in particular, Kharn was always the one who had the closest thing to respect out of any of the Legionaries, but even then that could not last. Many a supposed defeat in the eyes of Angron would occur, and after an incident involving a thwarted decimation during the Gehenna campaign, Angron would flee the Legion. For about 2 years, Kharn would lead the Legion trying to find his Primarch. But during this time, a number of World Eaters, led by Centurion Mago, would plot to thwart Angron's plan to install the Butcher's Nails into the Legion. Disturbed and worried that it would draw the Legion down a dark path, this was something Kharn was originally involved in. The plan being for Angron and the Legion to be taken back to Terra so that way Angron could get the nails removed. But after Kharn was the one to find Angron, witnessing his father sitting upon a giant mountain of animal skulls, loudly lamenting that the only thing he wanted was to just die, considering the fact to him, he died on Neria, and he was basically a dead man walking, so why should he continue to live? Kharn once again breached him. He reassured him. He told Angron that his sons were willing to do literally anything in order to get in their good graces, that they needed a leader, that they needed a father. And once again, he reiterated the pledge of loyalty that he had given to his father all those years ago. And this piqued Angron's ear, and after learning that the Butcher's nails were now fully functional, his first command was for the Legion to select one of their ranks to test the final incarnation of the nails. And despite Kharn's initial plan to side with the Centurion, he stepped forward. He elected to be installed with the nails, and for the first time, Kharn would experience the unbridled rage and endless ticking that would harass the brains and thoughts of those in possession of the nails. This event would push the Centurion and those allied with him into action. They would attempt to arrest Angron, but Kharn would step forward and say no, and Centurion 𝐸𝐽𝐸 and Kharn would duel. And despite the fact that before the nails were installed, Kharn and 𝐸𝐸𝐸 were basically just neck and neck in terms of sheer combat ability, the nails gave Kharn such incredible ferocity that he was no match. Kharn would stand over 𝐸𝐸𝐸, as 𝐸𝐸𝐸 pleaded with Kharn to remove the nails, that this isn't strength. This is tantamount to treason, not only to the Legion, but the ideals of the Imperium and as their role as an Astartes. But Kharn, knowing that this was the only true path to acceptance by their father, would push the very conflicted feelings that he had aside, stating that he would follow his Primarch to the end, and that defiance of the Primarch is in and of itself defiance of the Legion and the treason he criticizes. And at this moment, the Legion's fate would be sealed, as every legionary would receive the Butcher's nails, and a new age, one much darker and bloodier, would begin. When the call came down from Horus Lupercal that the legions of the World Eaters, Sons of Horus, Emperor's Children, and Death Guard were to muster at Isstvan III, Kharn and his brothers would be there to bring the traitorous world back into compliance. However, the virus bombing of the world intended to rid the Loyalists cleanly would be thwarted, and Angron, just like every other time, would descend onto the world, his legion in tow, and they would engage with the remaining Loyalists in close combat over the course of the next 3 months. Kharn would stalk the burned-out and hollow cities of Isstvan III, the Butcher's nails consuming and churning his mind, the battle itself being a mere blur that he could barely remember. He would unknowingly begin to walk down the eightfold path laid out for him by his future god Khorne, chanting that he was the eightfold path before even knowing what that actually meant. And as he slaughtered his former brothers in order to serve the Angron's will and the Warmaster, he would eventually come across his longtime friend Garviel Loken, and after a frenetic and violent duel, Kharn would be impaled onto the front of a transport, only brought back from the brink of death by the Legion's apothecaries, and potentially Khorne himself. The Legion itself would embark on the Shadow Crusade alongside the Wordbearers, and lay siege to the realm of Ultramar. But during all of this, something would begin to bother Kharn subconsciously, and would soon rear its pain-induced head. Angron was not a worthy father. During a discussion between Argel and himself, Argel would state that Angron was not worthy of the title of Primarch. He was not becoming of what a Primarch should be. And despite the reverence and love that Kharn had for Angron, he knew that Angron was broken. He desired such a relationship with his Primarch, that duality of loyalty and fatherhood that feeds back between Primarch and Legionary that almost every other Legion has, but that never happened. Angron practiced conditional respect, and even then, if you were not worthy of it, you were a mere weapon to be cast aside. And after fully realizing this, Kharn would be in incredible dismay and pain, and while he would continue to serve as Primarch, the hope and dream that he had for his Legion, the Legion unified under a loving father, or as close to loving as a Primarch could be, would now begin to die, whether he realized it or not. And as the Shadow Crusade continued, and Angron proceeded to get more and more unstable, he would continue to rely on Argel both as a battle brother and a friend, and their friendship would continue to grow, as both of them would learn and aid each other both in and outside of battle. For the first time, Kharn would begin to be somewhat content with his life. Despite the nature of the nails and the Legion, Argel and his wisdom would be the thing that would bring Kharn into a mentally healthy place. and combined with the fact that Lorgar had a plan for Angron, it was a foregone conclusion that the Legion would be coming home to this area. And after Angron would confront the High Riders once again, horrified at the revelation that his reputation was not one of a conqueror or a boogeyman, but as a coward, it would be Kharn alongside Angron who would lead the charge to butcher the world and make it so that the seas and cracks of the slave world would run red with the blood of their tyrants. The Battle of Neria would rage as the Word Bearers and World Eaters would clash with the newly arrived Ultramarines, and Kharn would fight by himself against hordes of them, titans raging around him and losing entire control of himself to the nails. Argel desperately fighting alongside him to make sure that he doesn't die, and that if he did, he wouldn't die alone. But in the aftermath of this battle, Argel was wounded. Both were ravaged from the battle, but as Kharn left the scene, Argel was approached by Erebus. The discussion they had would reveal something that not even Kharn would know. Kharn was chosen. Kharn would be destined for great things in the eyes of the powers, and Argel, despite the destiny he had laid out for him, would jeopardize the blessings Kharn had unwittingly received his entire life. And Erebus was not going to let this happen. Erebus would plunge the Anathame blade into Argel, extinguishing the demon within him and leaving Argel to die, not as a warrior, but as a betrayed apprentice of a flawed master. And upon Kharn's return to the World Eater's flagship, the Conqueror, Lorgar would beckon him to talk for a moment. Not only was Kharn disturbed at the appearance and form of his Primarch, he was livid. Livid at the sight of his once human gene-father now turned into something much worse. Lorgar would explain that it was the only way to prevent Angron from dying, and that this was the will of the gods, and that they would be better for it. But Lorgar would reveal something else to Kharn, the identity of the man who had slayed his best friend. Inside of the dueling pits of their flagship, Erebus would duel in the fighting pits, winning several battles, until Kharn would step foot into the pit, his new chain axe clutched in his hand. Gorechild, Kharn's preferred weapon from this point on, and the one that would claim thousands of lives, was a weapon once used by Angron that had now been discarded due to the fact that it was broken. He requested it be repaired and given over to him, despite the fact that many of the legionaries engaged in the superstition that reclaiming of fallen weapons is a bad idea. Finally crafted and possessing teeth of a Mica dragon, it was a sharp and brutal weapon, one quite fitting to claim a life that was so willing to take in others for little more than personal pleasure and scheme. Kharn would declare the battle Sanguis Extremis, a fight to the death, and the duel that followed was unlike anyone in the Legion before or since had ever seen. Kharn was not just fighting. He was not unbalanced or unthinking, but clinical, precise, but brutal all the same. It could not be called a duel, but a humiliation of a priest that could not back up his lies. Again and again, Erebus would be knocked to the ground. Blood would be spilled, and each time Kharn would calmly beckon Erebus to get up, only to knock him down again and draw more and more blood. Eventually, Kharn would have his fill, and it was time for Erebus to die like the pig he was. But before Kharn could bury the axe into Erebus' spine, he would disappear, using his abilities to rid himself of the death he arguably deserved. And from this moment onwards, Kharn had only one path left open to him, and that was a path of ruin. Kharn would approach his Primarch, the gargantuan monstrosity that was entirely different from what he knew. Calm but brimming with unbridled and pure, gleeful malice, he would declare that Kharn was to kill all of the serfs on the lower levels of the Conqueror, and build his Primarch a throne of skulls. A throne to pay tribute to their new master, Khorne. And pay tribute they did. The Shadow Crusade would end, as the Legion would rampage across the galaxy, butchering countless worlds as the blessings of Khorne would envelop Kharn and the Legion, until the day the Iron Warriors came to censure them. Perturabo, tasked by Horus to bring the Legion back to Ullanor to march on Terra, would succeed, and Kharn would be there, ready to march on Terra, or wherever his Primarch desired, even if it was against his will. And Kharn and Angron would meet again, where Angron would attempt to kill him. You see, the blood god Khorne does not care from which the blood flows, something we've already established. But Angron is quite resentful of Kharn. Angron is a slave, always has been and always will be. He was a slave to the people on Neria, to the Emperor, and now to Khorne. Ascending to demonhood was not his choice. He was sacrificed by Lorgar to Khorne to be Khorne's demon prince. And Angron is essentially just serving another master, whether or not the butcher's nails are hurting him. But Kharn is free. Kharn can make his own choices. Kharn is not simply motivated by sorrow, but by conflict, by blood, by the right of conquest and warfare. not because he's in that role, but because of the fact that he embodies it. So Khorne, seeing this free-thinking and inherent willingness to follow this path, was happy to give Kharn blessing over Angron, who, while useful, was just a tool for the great game, while Kharn was a conduit for Khorne's will in the mortal realms, whether he would realize it or not. And this would result in a duel that Kharn was barely even able to fight, as Angron, despite the favor Kharn had garnered, was no match for his Primarch, a Primarch that once again he did not want to fight, despite how much the Nails urged him to. The Demon Primarch would be teleported to Conrad Kurz's flagship, trapped inside of a hellish maze that Angron would entirely be incapable of escaping from. And in this moment, despite Kharn's faith in Angron wavering, and as the lure of the Blood God would grow ever stronger, he would reaffirm his vow to his Legion, a vow he made the first time he met his now changed father, that he would wear the red, the brass, that he would walk the eightfold path, but would not lose himself in such decadence, that he is not like Angron, he would not be like Angron, and would instead anoint the galaxy in the blood and blessings that Khorne could provide, and that is all. During the Siege of Terra, Kharn would lead the World Eaters from the front, attacking the Lion's Gate spaceport, making the throne world run red with blood, and the slaughter that would bring the world into a constant state of violence and warp-attuned chaos would leave the Siege of Terra being a conflict both in and out of time and space in equal measure. Kharn would begin to lose himself, the vow he made all those moons ago to himself and to his Legion, beginning to crumble before his very eyes, the final nail in that proverbial coffin being a rematch with Sigismund, who, instead of showing fear, or the closest thing an Astartes could have to fear, being met with zen and blissful peace that Kharn could not understand. Sigismund would lacerate Kharn and leave him to die, and only by chance was Kharn's body found, comatose and unthinking. And for many moons, this is how the great captain of the Eighth would live, as a hollow husk of violence only waiting to be reawakened. The Legion would flee to the Eye of Terror, infighting and petty rivalry making the Legion be on a teetering brink of complete collapse, and to many, Kharn was the only option that they had. And one fateful day, Kharn would return. He would lead the Legion against the Emperor's children on Scalathrax, his best chance for the Legion to reunite being to fight a common enemy, and one as decadent and irredeemable as the third was a worthy opponent at that. The two legions clashed, Kharn leading from the front and taking countless skulls for his chosen master. But eventually, Kharn would notice something. The Legion was not all in on this. There was some reservation, some doubt that this was the wrong path for the Legion, and this conflict against their cousin Legion was not worth it. Kharn would ignore this, pushing the Legion forward, but one faithful night, they stopped. The bitter cold and howling winds would force both legions to stop their assaults, to find shelter from the weather conditions that even Astartes would consider entirely inhospitable. This total disregard for the vow that he made to his Legion, to his Primarch, his battle brothers, and to the watchful eye of Khorne was an insult of such great magnitude that he could not ignore. This wasn't a tactical retreat, this was weakness, a sign that the Legion was falling to tendencies and ideals that they were not anything worth following or leading or anything else. And this made Kharn realize that the World Eaters did not need to exist anymore, that it deserved to die, that it had to die, that they weren't even World Eaters or Astartes anymore, but a band of rampaging hooligans in it for themselves and nothing more. And as the nails would begin to howl in his brain, the ticking getting ever louder, combined with all of these thoughts, Kharn would break. He would grab a flamer and burn his once comrades alive, butchering and maiming them, claiming their skulls in a rage and blood-fueled massacre that no one had ever seen. The nails bit, they ticked, they strangled his mind, the lives claimed tallying so high it left him on a mountain of corpses of both ally and enemy alike, as every single legionary on that world would die at the hands of the man that would become to be known as the Betrayer. World Eaters were gone, destined to act as various warbands that would fight each other just as much as anyone else. In many ways, some people consider them to be little more than orcs in powered armor, but this is not the case, as they are something much more and much darker than that, and Kharn is the perfect example. Kharn would lead his warband known as the Butcher Horde, easily the most dangerous and vile of all the World Eaters' descended warbands, and Kharn would lay slaughter at the feet of anything that would cross his chain axe's path. But he was not a blood-ravaged monster, a mindless berserker. Far from it, despite his status as the Betrayer. He was far more than what you would think, as only a fool would take Kharn as a mindless, rabid animal. He has an innate intelligence that makes him just as much of a master killer as a butcher. There is a method to his madness, and to underestimate him is to damn your soul, blood, and skull at Khorne's behest. Kharn is no longer just a Chaos Space Marine or a Khorne Berserker. He is death on two legs, the favored champion of Khorne, a man who is able to let go of his past and obligations in ways his father never could, to forge his own path, the Eightfold Path. He is a primal, wrathful force, one that is free to slay whomever, whatever, and to him, it is not where the blood and skulls come from that pleases Khorne, only that it does. So when Angron is concerned with taking revenge on his brothers or merely popping up when it's convenient, Kharn is always at the forefront of the slaughter, able to achieve the equilibrium that his failure of a father never could, and showing that Kharn is not just a Khorne Berserker or a child of Angron. He's just better. If you want to learn more about Kharn, read Kharn, Eater of Worlds, Chosen of Khorne, Prince of Blood, The Lost and the Damned, Warhawk, Slaves to Darkness, Shroud of Night, which is basically a Friday the 13th movie if Jason was Kharn, Betrayer, Wrath of Kharn, which is a classic story by William King, who also wrote many of the Gotrek and Felix books. Side note, go read the Gotrek and Felix books. They're very, very good, but also read Wrath of Kharn. The 9th edition World Eaters Codex, and The Red Path. All of these are wonderful reads, and I highly recommend them. And a very big thank you to the Remembrancer for making my thumbnail for this video. He's a really great dude and makes really great stuff, so if you're not watching him already, please go check him out. I'll have his link in my description. And typically this is the part of the video where I say, oh, hey, thanks for being a member, and thanks for your support, and yada yada, which thank you to the members for the support of the channel, and thank you all for supporting me. But I did want to get a bit of an update as to why I've been MIA the last few weeks. Long story short of it is I have a full-time job. I just am out of college and working full-time, so I'm typically quite busy and don't have a lot of time for stuff like this. And another thing is that I'm doing some other YouTube contract work and stuff like that. I can't necessarily share as to what I'm doing, but it's something I really enjoy and I'm really happy to do it. So as a result of that, I am going down to bi-weekly uploads, and you're also probably wondering, well, if it's bi-weekly uploads, why didn't the video come out last week? Well, needless to say, the laptop that I was editing on for a while since my main desktop's graphics card went down, I was using that because my cousin loaned me it, and then the power input jack on the motherboard just quit. So I had to go out and get a new graphics card or else not be able to make videos, and thankfully I found a pretty good deal on a used RTX 3090, which, despite me having 3 support brackets in my case to make sure the thing doesn't fall out of the PCI slot, as well as breaking it, it's really, really good card. And so now with me being back up and running, uploads should continue as normal. If you want more updates, go to the community tab and click the Discord join link over there. We have fun and do movie nights and game nights sometimes, and if you want more updates and stuff like that, and to be more readily up to date with stuff like that, please join that. I also will probably end up posting those in the community tab as well, since I probably should have been doing that to begin with, but hey, I'm only human. And with all that being said, there is one more topic that I would like to address, and that is my condolences to the fans, family, and friends of 𝐀𝐦𝐦𝐞𝐫. If you do not know who he is, or a little bit about myself, I've been into comics for many, many years. For one point in my life, I wanted to be a comic writer, and one of the things that allowed me to really get into comics and fully understand it was his channel. And now that he's gone, because I still consistently watched his videos up until the time of his passing, and it's just been... It's been really sad for me, despite me never knowing the guy personally. He was such a strong fixture in my, youth, and just me learning that world, and it's just, it's really unfortunate what's happened. So, rest in peace, Benny, comic historian, just hoping you're okay. On that note, thank you all very much for watching, and I hope you have a great night.